Welcome to the Great Basin Prescribed Fire and Smoke Transport Briefing for Wednesday, December 10th. Currently, we have quite a bit of prescribed burning occurring, especially in Utah, but also a few prescribed fires up across the north and into western areas as well. Over the last 7 to 14 days, very dry conditions have persisted across western and southern areas of the Great Basin, with any storms targeting Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah. Some of these areas over the last 2 weeks have seen precipitation that has been above normal, but for the most part still relatively below normal even with this additional moisture. Over the last 72 hours, we have had new snowfall and precipitation across parts of central and eastern Idaho into Wyoming. And some of these snowfall reports, especially in central Idaho, have been rather healthy, above a foot or 2 feet of snow in some of those areas. However, snowpack continues to be below normal across many areas of the Great Basin, although we have seen areas in Idaho and Wyoming increase over the last week with just the additional snowfall, still sitting about 50 to 70% of normal. Very dry conditions over western areas of the Great Basin, with our snowpack on the west side well below average for the time of year. Some areas in Utah are doing a little bit better with some of the storms moving through, but still generally in that 60 to 70% with respect to snowfall for the time of year. So with these drier conditions, fuel moistures have definitely been on the lower side and will continue dropping over parts of southern Idaho into western and southern Nevada, where dry conditions will continue through this weekend. So we will see some of those fuel moistures near record lows for the time of year, but still well above critical values. But just something to keep in mind with prescribed burning, that fuel conditions are on the drier side in some of these areas that haven't seen precipitation recently. Otherwise, in parts of eastern Idaho and down into Utah, where we do have quite a bit of prescribed fire ongoing, we are seeing generally near normal fuel moistures for the time of year. Some of those areas are doing a little bit better. Otherwise, our satellite picture, we have a ridge of high pressure dominating the west coast with northerly or northwesterly flow across Idaho, Wyoming, and Utah. And this has generally been the storm track and will continue to be the storm track here for the coming week, with any systems moving across far northern areas and keeping much warmer and drier conditions to the south. So for today, again, we'll see much of that pattern. We do have cloud cover across the northern half of the Great Basin, but any showers today will be on the light side and mainly over central and eastern Idaho into Wyoming. We will have fairly poor dispersion with the exception of up north, where we have some northwest to westerly winds, which will improve conditions somewhat over southern Idaho, but otherwise poor air quality and poor dispersion over much of Nevada into Utah. So again, the transport winds, any breezy winds will be up north today and fairly localized with some gusts above 35 or 40 miles per hour. Mixing heights remain higher up north and much lower over western and southern areas. Temperatures will continue to be well above normal. We will see temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above normal over this next week, with some minor fluctuations, especially across northern areas as we have some weaker systems move in. But some areas today will see near record temperatures, especially up north in Idaho. Relative humidity will remain elevated despite the drier conditions, but we will see some areas over western and southern Nevada drop into the teens. Really similar weather pattern really through much of this weekend with the ridge off the coast. We will still have some clouds and light showers in the north tomorrow with that northwest flow. Again, poor dispersion in most areas with the exception of southern Idaho, and still those gusty winds up north. Temperatures will drop a couple of degrees across the northern tier, maybe outside of records, but still well above normal, even up north, with the systems impacting the far northern areas. Otherwise, relative humidity, very similar picture to today. Friday, again, that similar persistent ridge off the west coast will push some of the moisture a little bit further north as the ridge builds along the far west coast. So we will see drier conditions up in Idaho and Wyoming on Friday with a little bit less cloud cover. Still, the breezy northwest winds continue in the north, and we will see, again, generally low mixing heights region-wide. Temperatures on Friday very similar to Thursday, again, keeping with that trend of temperatures 10 to 20 degrees above normal, and the drier conditions over western and southern areas. Any precipitation over the next few days will be fairly light and confined to mainly the higher elevations of central and eastern Idaho and western Wyoming, but on the modest side, certainly with respect to what we saw over the last couple of days with the new snowfall. As we move into the weekend, the ridge will finally start to push eastward across the region, so we will see generally lighter winds across all areas, but again, poor dispersion. We are expecting those inversions to keep air quality poor in a lot of the valleys across the Great Basin, along with the above normal temperatures. As we move into Sunday, Monday, we might see a weaker trough move into the west coast, and this may help improve some of the air quality and dispersion across parts of northern Nevada into Idaho. So definitely good news in those areas, and it may finally bring a little bit of moisture into far western areas with respect to cloud cover and maybe some light showers. But still keeping on the dry side for the Great Basin, hoping conditions will change as we get a little bit later in December. So looking at the precipitation totals for the weekend, again, expecting those dry conditions region-wide as the ridge builds across the region, pushing any of that moisture to the north or keeping it well to the west in the Pacific Northwest. As we move into the early part of next week, as we may see another return of that shower activity. So we could see some showers moving into the central and northern Sierra, which would definitely be good news for some of those areas. And then much lighter precipitation across the northern half of Nevada and Utah, with any probably new accumulating snowfall in the higher elevations confined to the north. 7-day total precip looks very similar to that period next week, since that's really the next storm system. And then the 8 to 14-day outlook from December 17th through the 23rd shows continued well above normal temperature potential across the west, but we will see possibly that precipitation dropping a little bit further south into the northern half of the Great Basin, especially towards the end of the period. That concludes the webcast for today. Check back on Friday for the latest updates.